Good morning, everybody, and welcome to The Art as Well. My guest this morning is Michelle Harton. Michelle hails from Cavan. So let's go over straight away and say good morning to Michelle. Hi, Michelle, how are you?
Good morning, Alan. How are you?
Great, thank you. Great. So, Michelle, you're very welcome to the Art as Well this morning. And tell us a little bit about yourself, because I know you've had a number of careers before you became a full-time artist. I know you were always interested in art, but you did
Yeah.
a couple of things. What did you study?
So I studied when I left secondary school. I studied music industry management and live production. And I did that for 2 years in Ballyfermot for the diploma. And
Yeah.
then at the time they weren't doing the degrees in Ireland, so I ended up going to study in High Wycombe in
Mm.
Buckinghamshire and did a year there and then got my degree in music industry management.
And
At
why
the
did
time.
you actually do that?
I had a lot of friends who were in bands at the time, and so I was always at gigs. I was always kind of, involved with them when they'd be practicing or when they'd be putting on gigs. And I actually used to do a lot of photography for them as well.
Mhm.
So for a while, when I was in secondary school, I thought maybe I would go on to study photography as well. And I kind of, at the time, to get into some of the good photography courses, the points were actually really high.
Oh,
And um, I had seen kind of the level of some of the portfolios, and I don't know, I didn't even try, and I kind of regretted it then, but I just decided not to pursue that, and that maybe I would prefer to do the music industry management and learn about events and working in record companies,
hmm.
um, and things like that. But I suppose um, I hadn't thought it would be so. I should have, but I didn't realize the course was going to be so business intensive, which
Yeah.
was, it was all HR, marketing, contract law, which was actually the only point that or part that I really enjoyed really was the contract law,
Mm.
which I was surprised about. And I almost at one point I considered going on to actually do some more courses to train to be a contract lawyer for the music industry.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so
But what's interesting about that is that all these sort of things later on in your career are feeding into to help you
yeah,
in your career. So nothing that you've done, I think, without exception, has done anything but help in terms of
no,
how you progressed your work. So
no, definitely
tell us about
not.
a few other things, because when you left that, what did you do?
So when I left that, I ended up going to Canada to live there for a year and work there. So when I went over first, I worked in a vintage clothes shop for a couple of months. And while I was there, one day it was raining outside, and they were filming the program Supernatural on the street outside the shop. And there was two men kind of huddled who were working on the program, and I told them to come in out of the rain into the shop if they wanted. And it turned out one of the men, Joe O'Neill, was from Leitrim.
Hmm.
And we got chatting, and then Joe came back the next day and offered me a job to be his assistant to help work on the transport for the series
Mhm.
in uh, in Vancouver. So I ended up working for him for the rest of the year. We used to buy and sell things like fire trucks and all kinds of strange equipment.
Yeah. Now
Um,
I'm beginning to regret what I said about everything that you've done is all related to art. But you know something, in a funny way it is, because it's got you to sort of go outside your comfort zone in
yeah,
terms of talking to people about your art and trying to make connections and arrange shows, anything like that.
yeah. I suppose. Well, I suppose doing the course, like in because a lot of it was event management. I did learn a lot about event management, about promoting events. That really fed into it afterwards. And then when I came back from Vancouver, I ended up working for Sachi Gallery for 3.5 years.
Mhm.
So a lot of what I had learned on the course
Yeah.
regarding event management and marketing, it really came into play there. And then that gave me, I suppose, a really good education into um like the business side of art,
Yes,
really.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
very
I
useful.
went at it things backwards.
I know, I know. Yeah. No, 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 I can see how that would have been very useful. And that was in Cavan where you were born and where you're still
Yeah,
living.
haven't. And I mean, all the time I had always been doing, little art courses kind of in between, or I never, like, even when I was in Vancouver, I was doing some art courses. It never left me, and it was always kind of, I suppose, a want that I think that I regretted not going to do that in college first.
Yes.
Um, yeah,
But
so
didn't you do some art, some diploma in art, didn't you?
so eventually I went on like a good few years, like I was probably about 27, I think, at the time, after I saw art, then moved to Dublin, and I decided not to go to Dublin, that I wanted to stay living in Cavan.
Mm.
And then I ended up doing a 2-year diploma in Enniskillen in Fermanagh College.
Yeah.
Um, so I think they've changed the name. I think it's Southwest College now. But so I did a 2-year diploma there, but it was only like 1, 2 days a week. And it wasn't, I suppose, the experience I'd kind of expected.
Mm.
After regretting not going to college, I really should have done probably something more full time. But at the time, I was kind of working in between as well.
I know.
Um, I also the Blue Wall Gallery was in Cavan at the time, run by Joe Keenan and his wife Jay McCormick, and I used to come in once a month as well and help hang their shows, which was lovely too, and kind of kept me in that loop
In the
of
loop.
the art
Yeah.
world too.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was really, when I was in college, I learned very quickly that I wasn't going to get the intensive training that I wanted, especially I really wanted to learn, like, kind of classical portraiture, or how to really paint something realistically so I could break the rules. I always
Yeah.
feel you should know the rules so you can break them well. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I found out, I started looking up online what portraiture artists that I really loved, and a lot of them were American, and I checked who had they been trained by, and I kept seeing this name, Ted Set Jacobs. So I tracked down Ted Set Jacobs and I emailed him. And at this time, he had retired from his kind of very intensive long courses,
Mm.
so he wasn't teaching, but he was living in France. And he said two of my students, and Timothy Stokes, that they were had a course not that far from them. So I ended up going there just at the beginning for 3 weeks, and I did like a really intensive portraiture course. And then I knew, like, that training, the quality of training was out there that I
Yes.
was looking for. So when I finished in Enniskillen, or just after I finished the course in Enniskillen, I actually went back for 6 weeks and did a very intensive 6 weeks there in figure painting and drawing. And I mean, you're painting from the morning to the evening with a live model all day long.
Online.
Sorry?
Online.
No, this is in France. I was
Oh,
actually in.
sorry. Okay. Yes.
Yes, I went to France, and you're just there. You're eating, sleeping, breathing,
Yeah.
painting.
Brilliant.
uh, and I mean, they're incredible. Like, they're absolutely incredible teachers. So I really learned a lot from that. But I still struggled a bit, I guess, with I think the amount of hours. Well, I mean, as with your style of art, you have to put in a crazy amount of hours to
Yeah.
really, for it to feel natural. It's always a little bit of a struggle trying to get it realistic. So I in the background, I was kind of doing my other work, which was very free and more, I guess, mystical, and completely from my imagination. And then when I would show kind of more my portraiture work and the other pieces that I was really doing for fun, to de-stress from from
Yes.
the stressful portraiture work. Um,
So,
People were preferring the other work when I would show them to my friends.
yeah.
So that kind of gave me a little bit of a permission to feel like it's okay. You don't have to be, I guess in my head, I had this image of I had to be this type of painter.
Yeah.
Um, and so that kind of led me down the road of the more mystical work. But I suppose I always had the idea of how can I knot the two of them together?
Hmm.
How can I
Hmm.
incorporate one with the other, which is what my work has become now, I guess.
Sure. But before that, you were doing things like sound therapy and various things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about that also?
Yeah, sure. So, somewhere after college and between all the other jobs,
Yeah.
um, I
He's only telling you half of it, by the way.
yeah, so somewhere between there, I went to sound bath with Marta Topova in Dublin. And while for anyone who doesn't know what a sound bath is, you go into a room and you lie down and then you close your eyes, and all these beautiful instruments are played around you. And a lot of them they're tuned to the frequency that your body resonates at when it's healthy. So your body can have a physical and an emotional reaction to the work. It can actually have quite a detoxing effect on your body too, and it's relaxing if nothing else, you know.
Yes.
And in the middle of that, I kind of realized, like when I had done my thesis in music industry management, I did it on the effect of music on your brain, and if music could be used as a substitute drug. And at the time when I had done that, I was looking at it more from the concept of from a record company. If you knew how, you know, you could control like people's emotions through the music and how it
Yes.
affected the body,
Hmm.
you would obviously be able to produce much more successful music in the world, from a very commercial point of view. But when I started to do the research, I realized that it was being used to heal all kind of things, and there had been a lot of study into it being used for cancer and all different ailments. And so that kind of made me see the therapeutic side of music.
Yes.
So during this sound bath, when I was in it relaxing, I suddenly went, "Oh my God, this is why I did that thesis." And at the end of the course, or at the end of the sound bath, I talked to Martha that night, and she said that she was training people to do the sound bath. So I trained with Martha then in Dublin, and then I just started doing them myself, doing private treatments, and then mainly group
Yes.
facilitating.
But you did
And
this all over the place, didn't you?
yeah, like I was doing it all over the country, yeah.
Mm.
So that became quite intensive. Like there was some nights I'd be in a different county every night of the week. And they're usually like quite, you know, you do them at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night time. And so then could be driving an hour and an hour and a half. So I found that after a couple of years, I felt a bit burnt out from doing
Sure.
that, because you're a bit of a one man band. You're setting up a huge range of instruments. You're packing them up. You're driving home late in the dark on your own, and you're unpacking them. And you know, not dissimilar to somebody who'd be in a band having to lug equipment around.
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
yeah, so I decided after that, then I wanted to have a total change.
Yeah. Okay.
And I decided to go, what would give me an opportunity to go to a different country and work. So I had heard about teaching English. So I ended up going to Thailand to do the CELTA course, which is you know, the more intensive kind of one to teach English.
Hmm.
And from that, then I ended up getting a job in Vietnam, and I went to live there for a few months to teach English over there.
Yes. Yes, as you do. And
Yeah.
when did you come back?
So, that must be, God, around 2016, maybe.
Right.
I think
But this
so.
this had nothing to do with your connections, so subsequent connections in Korea.
No, that was
No.
totally
Okay,
separate.
so we'll get
Yeah.
on to that. But another job you had was running a pet store online.
Yeah, I did that actually when I was working for Sachi Gallery.
Hmm.
So when I had come back from Canada, or when I was in Canada, I was seeing these amazing pet shops all over the place. I absolutely love animals, and that's why they feature like quite heavily in my work. And also, I've been a volunteered with Cavan SPCA for years as well.
Yes.
Um, so I had seen all these beautiful different dog items and dog clothes and fancy dog products that weren't being really sold in Ireland at the minute. So when I came back, I set up the online pet shop, and that got quite a lot of attention at the time. And I used to be on radio shows and TV programs and things with dog
Really?
fashion,
Fantastic.
which was
Yeah.
it was great. It got a big push, but I was also then at the same time I started work it because I didn't know how it was going to go. So I took the job in the gallery as well. So I would work in the gallery during the day, and then I was coming home at nighttime having to pack orders and run that. So, that was kind of hard as well, doing the two things at the time. So eventually I sold that. I had that business kind of going in the background for a long time, and I sold that around the time I was in Enniskillen. I think it was
Okay.
the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay. Um, Now you ran away to Peru.
Oh yes.
Now I'm trying to be diplomatic here. Should I ask you why you ran away or why Peru? I'm not sure
Uh,
which I should ask you.
it was
Maybe
probably
both.
it was probably just another one. Every now and again, I kind of feel like I needed change.
Yes.
I get a bit bored of what I'm doing. Art has actually been the only thing that has been
A
consistent
constant. Yeah. Yeah.
in the background of all these things. So yeah, I was kind of feeling like I wasn't sure the sound bats. I was doing the sound bats at the time, and I was doing them pretty intensively, and I just felt like I wanted a break to do something new. And I looked, how could I do this? How could I just kind of run away for a while? And I looked at the work away. It's like the woofers, you can volunteer to work somewhere, and
Yeah.
then they give you accommodation and your food. So I saw a bar in Cusco, in a hostel in Peru, and I thought, well, that would be fun because even though I'm on my own, I'd be able to meet people in the hostel, and it was in right in the middle of Cusco, and it would
Yes.
allow me to kind of travel to places like Machu Picchu and that at the
Mm,
weekends.
mm.
So yeah, they accepted me there, and I went to Peru for 6 weeks and worked over there, and it was one of my most favorite jobs that I ever had.
That's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
Not to embarrass you.
No, I asked. Cusco was incredible, and it's actually only when I started to do my landscape work, I noticed that the mountains in Peru started to come into the work, and also with Vietnam. Like I noticed then how important all those experiences were years later of the travel. Like when I love traveling, but I never think I'm going there to get, I guess, influence or
Yes.
inspiration. But because the way I work is I start with a very abstract painting, and then I see whatever images come to mind from the abstracted shapes, then I start to develop on that. So I was started to see all, these images from Peru and Vietnam in the work.
Yeah.
So I just realized how important it is actually for me to travel to
Yes.
kind of bank those memories.
Okay. So it would appear that of late you've sort of settled a lot more
Yeah,
and you concentrated on art and art alone. Yeah.
yeah,
So at
definitely.
what point did Sachi's come into the picture?
To go to the Sachi Gallery when
Yeah.
I exhibited there. So, um, let me see. So before that, so around 2019, I it was actually my partner Ivano. He was just like, you're working all these other jobs, and I had been working an office job, and the people were really really nice, but I just was finding it really hard to be on the computer all day. And
Mm.
even one weekend after I had been asked to do a small show, a small exhibition, and I worked all weekend to try and have enough pieces,
Yeah.
to give to it. And on the Monday my boss actually said to me, what were you doing all week? You're glowing, like you
Yeah.
look totally different. And the only thing I had been doing was painting. So at that, it started to trigger in my head, like she's even seeing a difference in me when I paint. So Ivano really pushed me to, he was like, just, forget about the other jobs for now. I can, you know,
Mm.
I can take care of the both of us for now. So just concentrate on your art and see what you can do from it.
Yes.
Um, so I I was lucky enough to get I put in a proposal for an exhibition to the Arts Office in Cavan,
Mm.
for to do an exhibition based on the fairy stories of Oscar Wilde. And they the library actually wanted to put this show on for Culture Night and for Children's World Festival Book Month. Um, and so I did. I ended up spending a year like kind of reading back through the fairy stories of Oscar Wilde, because my grandmother had given it to me as a child, and um, I had started to write down like little pieces from it of
Mhm.
what, you know, that triggered kind of visuals to me. And so after I did that show, and I had a good body of work from that. Um, just before that, I submitted an application to the Sachi Gallery for their fair, the Star Art Fair, and they accepted me for that. So I brought some of that work along with some other of my landscape work to the Sachi Gallery in London, and it was a really scary thing to do because it was very, very expensive.
Well, I
And
gather so. And but you really put your money where your mouth was, didn't you?
well,
Maxed
yeah,
out a few credit cards.
yeah, it definitely, because Ivano had kind of given me this opportunity, I kind of was like, I don't want to waste this, and I want to really like go full hog at it. And you know, it's all well and good doing small little fairs, which is important here, there, and everywhere. But I really wanted to see what would happen if I spent a lot of money and really put the work in kind
Mm.
of a very famous building with very like wealthy people walking around it, and to exhibit alongside some very, very famous artists.
Mm, mm.
So that was my motivation for that.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll show a couple of things that actually helped in terms of getting on that platform.
Yeah.
But having done that, what did that actually, what sort of doors did it open subsequently? And was that the sort of the opening for Korea?
Yes, definitely. So the Star Art Fair licensed. So what happened first after the fair was while I was at the fair, I was approached by two different galleries, which was obviously a lovely boost.
Yeah.
That galleries were interested. So I ended up going with one gallery in St. Albans, Vash Blue, who still represent me now. And they pretty much took most of the work that I had there, which was
Yes.
amazing because I didn't have to pay to ship it home.
Ship it home, exactly. Yes.
So one thing I
Yeah.
will say about, you know, people ask me about these art fairs, you have to be very careful with these art fairs, especially when they're in another country. One, they're very expensive. Two, there's so many of them at the minute that are pretty much scams,
Yeah.
that you pay a lot of money, and they don't put any money into marketing. They're only interested in getting the stand fee. Um, I was very lucky that even though like at the time I didn't sell that much at the fair, I was able to, I got all these other opportunities that came out of it.
Mm.
Like Vash Blue also, they made beautiful prints out of my work, you know, limited edition prints. And then subsequently, then Start was licensed to a company in Korea.
Mm.
So the year after, so I did the Start Fair in 2021, I think it was. So they were launching the fair in Seoul in Korea, and they invited some of us who had done the fair the year before to come, and they said, you know, you don't have to pay for the stand. It will do it on a commission basis just to get us to come
Oh,
over
really?
because
That was
yeah,
good. Yeah, okay.
obviously we knew we were going to have to spend a lot of money to get there, you
Mm.
know, as well. But they shipped out the work for us, which was brilliant because
Mm.
it's a huge expense. I
Yeah.
mean, even to get the work from here to England now with the customs costs, it's just, I would be very, very wary even myself about doing it again in the UK, or anywhere that you have to pay the extra custom costs, because it bumps the price of your artwork up
Sure, of course.
hugely. Yeah.
So having got to Korea, how did that unveil for you?
So when I was at Korea, kind of showed me a whole other world of art. The way that the art was being, you know, the artists were being perceived in South Korea. There was almost kind of, some of them were put on this like almost a rock star kind of level, you know.
Yeah.
And I was ended up showing among like some of these famous K-pop music stars in Korea and actors. They were also painters. So their work was at the show also. They were at the show. It was
Oh,
bringing in a huge amount of media coverage. We were kind of getting filmed all the time. And, you know, it just showed me a different level of artist, I guess.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and a whole other style of art. Like I
Yeah.
could see, like in Korea, the kind of very bright, poppy kind of art is very popular right now. And I suppose they really liked my bright colors of art.
Yes,
So
yes,
yeah,
yes.
and they were really, really into. I brought two of the Oscar Wilde pieces over, and they were so into the stories. Like they absolutely. So then it made me realize how much, the Korean people really enjoyed story.
Mm.
Um, and the CEO of the fair in Korea, he said, we're going to set up an art gallery and we'd like to represent you. And we'd like
Fantastic.
to give you a solo show the year after.
Yeah.
So they told me to kind of think of an idea. So the fact that the people had responded so well to the Oscar Wilde, I decided I would do it on Korean folklore, because my first full body of work really that I had done years before that was on the folklore of Cavan with my friend Jackie O'Neill, she was the one who kind of pushed me at the beginning to do the show, because she had been showing for a while and she knew I painted, and
Yes.
she knew I wouldn't show my work. So
Mhm.
she
Yeah.
had pushed me to do the show. So the year after I went back then, so I painted like crazy from
Mm.
when I got back, because they asked me to do the show next July and they had just asked me. This was like September, October time.
Oh,
And
mm.
it was a huge gallery. So they had asked for over 25 big pieces. Um,
Yeah.
so that kind of took over my whole life.
And what about getting those pieces out there, Michelle?
So they transported them all over for me. So the way that I work with them is they pay upfront for all that work.
Mhm.
To go. I mean, I think it cost over 8,000
Yes.
uh to send it over there. I mean, it's huge money. It took me a week even just to put them in boxes before they
Did it?
went
Yes.
over. This is all the, and you can't. The problem is you can't get funding for any of these um things, or any of these fairs, or because I was working with a gallery.
Mm.
When you put applications in, to any of the arts funding bodies, they say that your application is too commercial, which I
Too
have a huge,
commercial.
that is too commercial, which I
Wow.
have an absolutely huge problem with,
Yeah.
because one, I mean, they're not paying me to paint for the 9 months up to me doing the show. There's no chance of me, like, I don't know if I'm going to sell anything.
Yeah.
Also, like, because you're going to another country, you're promoting Irish art in another country as well.
Yes.
And I don't understand the idea of too commercial, because really at the end of the day, what does an artist do? We make art and we sell it.
Mm.
Um, so
Yeah,
I
I'm very,
find that
yeah,
difficult.
I'm surprised to hear that, Michelle, because you'd imagine the sort of there'd be certain departments that would be interested in that. I think Maurice Quillen might have alluded to that. That there could be funding from some cultural.
Yeah, I spoke to a lot of different bodies and they all said because it was a gallery, or because they definitely won't
Oh, I
fund art.
see.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
won't,
yeah.
they don't want to fund them. And then so yeah, I went back to do the show then
Mhm.
the year after in Korea, and yeah, it was great. What came out of that then was a lot of other things. The I ended up selling the ambassador for Ireland in Korea came to the show, and she's an amazing woman, Michelle Winthrop, and she's really supportive of the arts. And so the Irish embassy in Korea bought a painting for it that now hangs in the embassy there in Korea.
Fabulous.
Uh, I
Yeah.
got ended up, which you'll see in the slides afterwards, we can
Hmm.
show, is multiple different shows came out of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and the,
Let's talk about that when we come to that. Before we go into the slides, can we have a quick peek at your studio?
of course, yeah.
Oh, it's that home, yeah?
Sorry.
That home in Cavan.
Yes. So my studio is in my house. Is in
Yeah.
a bedroom.
Yeah.
So we're very lucky that we had spare bedrooms in the house here and they're great size, and actually it's en suite, so I have a bathroom and everything. So this is when I work on small work, I usually work here at
Mhm.
this desk. Um, lots and lots of brushes that I don't probably use half of them. And then, well, this is what I'm looking out at. I don't know if you can see through
Well,
the
that's,
window.
oh, we can, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
lovely.
I'm surrounded by fields. I'm here in the countryside in Kilnalek.
Yeah,
So we get incredible sunsets there in the evening, which is shows up a lot in my work actually.
yeah,
Um, so I use I think a lot of artists will know this, the IKEA trolley
yes,
for keeping a lot of the paint. God, for IKEA, we
yeah,
really owe a lot to IKEA artists.
yes. I think a lot of people would agree with you there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm lucky that I have a lot of wall space here.
Mhm.
Now all these, like this piece is one I think it's finished now at the minute, but most of the other pieces are kind of they're in process. So I would start with these very abstract backgrounds, and
Yes,
then I would just, I guess, see figures in them or landscapes. If I'm working on something like, say, for my body of work that I did in Korea, half of it was based on the folklore of Korea. So I would research all the stories first, and then I'd have them in my mind for when I'm painting. And
yes,
then I would just, when I'd see them there, something from the story in the paint, and I'd start to bring it out. I tend to paint a lot on the floor, like kneeling right here,
yeah,
and I put the work there because the light actually seems to be best, and
yeah.
so that's why I have all the paints here beside me on the floor.
Very good.
Um,
Yeah.
a lot of my brushes are very worn, old Brussels, kind of the very
Listen,
bristly
yeah,
old ones, and they're really the ones that I prefer the most, to be honest.
yeah,
Um, that's my palette. There is three bento box lids usually. So I
yeah.
tend to use one for my reds and yellows and whites and lighter colors. The one in the middle is my mixer, and then this one I use for my blues, greens, blacks, darker colors.
Right.
Um, so I don't know why it just works for me
And
that way.
what makes your colors so vibrant and luminous?
I tend to use a lot of neon paints. I
Okay.
really like neon paints, and I find that they create really beautiful different tones when you mix them with other colors.
Yes.
Um, so I just love, even I tried a lot to do darker pictures, but I usually end up with some bright color.
Oh, they're stunning. And how do you finish them off? Because they are acrylic. So
Yes,
do you varnish them, or what do you do?
so the way I finish them is I put a matte or sorry, a gloss medium. So I put gloss medium, one or two coats of that on it, and then I get cold wax, and I buff the cold wax into it. I usually use this the Gambin. Don't know if you can see it. That cold wax.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
layers of that into it, and that I got that from, I had studied with Nicholas Wilson. I did his creative visionary program a couple of years ago, which is an amazing intensive art program, and he was the one who suggested that idea. It gives you a lovely kind of polished finish.
Very
um
interesting. I'd never heard of that before, Michelle.
it gives you like almost, he always describes it as like a polished stone kind
Yeah.
of finish.
Yeah.
So I think people always think my work is actually oils. I work only in acrylics usually, and it kind of gives it that finish like of an oil.
Okay. Yeah. No,
Um,
that's very interesting, because in my letter out to people, or email, I said that I was immediately struck when I came into the room by the luminescence of your paintings.
well, thank you.
Incredibly attractive, and obviously what you're doing is embellishing that, and making it really stand out.
Yeah, this is just, I know artists like to see storage. So this is
Yeah.
another big IKEA shelving unit that I just made bigger. So it means I can kind of stack the paintings,
Yes.
uh, at different levels, and just some extra storage. And then I just have a bathroom in there with a sink, which is
Yeah.
also full of boxes. So, and then I just have a kind of a table here in the corner for computers and other
So you
bits and
basically
bobs.
you paint on the walls. You don't use an easel as such, do you?
No, only for the small work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so usually they're just nails. I just put nails. I have the walls absolutely destroyed. And then my favorite thing to use is actually tin cans. I keep all like, the bean
Yeah.
cans and tin cans. And then these are just shelves. They're IKEA as well, IKEA shelves, and I just put them on top of them.
Oh,
So
I
it
see.
just gives me
Yes.
a
Yes. I see now. Yeah.
platform for them to kind of to sit on. And I kind of
Brilliant.
like to have all the work around. All this work is unfinished, obviously. So I like to just have them around. So if sometimes I could be looking for something at something for months and months and months before something will come out of it.
I know. I know. Very good. Okay. Let's go straight into your work.
So this one was just to show, like, this was my end of college exhibition. And this was the type of work I was doing at that time, was the connection between people and animals, which I still do now. And this was me kind of trying to figure out that idea of, the realistic elements with the very flat kind of elements of the books and her clothes. And this woman actually here is an amazing artist, Ricky Vandenberg. And Ricky was a huge push for me to keep painting. She used to have a group in her house. A few of us would go and paint on a Friday together, which was amazing, kind of to keep
Yeah.
us, accountable to show something each week. But Ricky has been hugely influential on me. Like, anytime I felt like, I couldn't do it, or I was going to give up, or she'd always was able to encourage me and to help me. And actually the top portrait that's there, you can't see that well, but is
Oh,
is
yes.
of Ricky, her dog.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Very good. And that goes back to 2012.
yeah, so I was just about just before I turned 29, I think, that at that stage.
Okay.
So yeah, I went back to college quite late then to do the art. So this was just an example of what I started to learn in Studio Scalier with Michelle Tully and Timothy Stotz in France. So they would, bring you through, like, the first example there on the left is just how to see light, how to break down the colors and the tones and the shapes. And then you're moving more into how to, like, bend form, how
Mhm.
to curve something. So people always wondered what I had done in France and what kind of training I had received. So that was just kind of a little example of the type of painting they do, because I hadn't been shown anything like that in Ireland, and I wasn't able to find that kind of study here at the time, which I think is really a shame.
Mm.
I think that should be the basics of what you're taught in any art course, any painting course, any drawing course, from when you start at the beginning. But it seems like a lot of people, from my experience, you're kind of left to your
Yeah.
own device to actually go and figure out,
I know.
you know,
Yes.
to get the learning, to look for the learning yourself while you're in the college. And I don't know why, I think that's a very strange way to train people in art.
I think you were unlucky in that particular course you did, though.
Yeah, although at that time it was very, very abstract in most colleges when I
Was it?
went.
All right.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
everywhere was very, like, just express yourself, kind
Mm.
of.
Yeah.
Uh, you didn't need to know. It was kind of almost seen as a bit archaic, and to want to learn to draw and
Really?
paint, like, oh
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I had some discussions with another art teacher in another art school, and yeah,
All
he
right.
he didn't agree with me at all that you should
Yeah.
be trained.
Terrible. Terrible. Okay.
Yeah, so this was when I started the folklore. This was one large piece that I did for the folklore exhibition in Cavan. So I had done the portraiture and all that training, and this was the kind of work people were saying they preferred from me. So this was a folklore story about these nuns who had lived in Cavan, and they used to walk up a hill, the Barrack Hill in Cavan, and around the lake in the middle of the town. And when they all passed away, people said that they would still see them walking around the lake at night time.
All right.
So that
Yeah.
part of this. It was me. I did this on paper, so it was actually huge to do on paper. And poor Ricky that you saw in the first, she's actually a framer, and she had to figure out ways to to frame these massive pieces of paper so they
Yeah.
wouldn't crinkle. So yeah, that's an example of the folklore exhibition I had done with Jackie O'Neill, and the both of it. We spent about 6 months researching folklore and gathering stories and interviewing people all around Cavan. So that started my love of gathering stories and passing them on.
Okay.
This is the solo exhibition then I did based on the fairy stories of Oscar Wilde in Johnston Central Library in Cavan. So this was a huge one for me because this was my first biggie
Yeah.
and there was over 20 pieces in it as well, and it was really, really well received, and I sold a good few pieces at it, so that was a huge, a huge boost for a first show. And this is just one of the pieces, the birthday of the Infanta. And at the time we were living in a small enough house, and the box room in the house was my bedroom. And so I did her. She's she's about she's 140 centimeters. She's very big, and she's bigger than me. And I did her in a tiny box room, and people always say to me, "You can't paint." Yeah, I can't paint because I don't have space. Well, I started at the kitchen table for doing the first works that I was doing, and this I just tacked it to the wall in the tiny bedroom, and I painted it. And when she was finished, she was left screaming at the end of our bed for a couple of months before the show.
Yeah.
So poor Ivano had to wake up every morning and
Can-
go to bed every night with her screaming at him.
But briefly tell us the story behind this particular image and
So
painting.
the Infanta was a very spoiled, nasty little child, and it was her birthday party. And they brought this little dwarf that was captured in the woods to dance for her. He was found dancing in the woods, and so they captured him and they brought him to the palace to dance for her. And so he dances outside, and the Infanta is like laughing, everybody's cheering, and she throws him a rose. And so the little dwarf thinks that, that she actually is in love with him. So after he performs, he wanders inside around the palace, and he had never been inside before. And he comes into a room with mirrors. And then he sees a reflection in the mirror, but he doesn't realize it's him. Then he realizes, how kind of ugly and deformed he is, and he realizes that everybody was laughing at him, and that the Infanta actually, she didn't love him, that she was actually laughing at him, not with him. And he, out of that, he dies from the shock of it. When the Infanta comes into the room with her uncle, she asks what happens, and the uncle, he realizes that he's dead, and he said, I think he died maybe of a broken heart. And so the Infanta says, for the future, let those who come to play with me have no hearts. So that's the text that's written in there in the corner. And she just wants the party to go on. She's extremely selfish.
Yeah.
Doesn't care about him. So I think that was what I loved about the Oscar Wilde stories. It was, I just feel like he was trying to maybe say, she was trying to like create maybe a generation of people who wouldn't be so judgmental and would just be kind in general, probably from what he had gone through in his life as well.
Yes.
So yeah, I like the idea of putting very serious things and morals maybe dressed up as these more cartoony images.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely wonderful and very powerful.
Oh, thank you very
That's
much.
an image now that would stay with you.
Oh, thank you.
Now, I did mention as well that you'd sold 30 pieces of art in 30 days.
Yeah, so this all came about from the mystery art sale. I saw an American artist, Andrea Kendall, do something similar to this. So the idea was that I would do a painting a day for 30 days, and people could pre-buy the work. So I sold it quite cheap at the beginning, and so they could pre-buy a slot to get one of these pieces at a very, very discounted price. So every day I would paint a painting, and I would put it on my Instagram and Facebook page. And the first person who said they wanted it, they could get it. But what happened was, it was quite fun because people didn't know what time of the day that I was going to post.
Because you
So
didn't.
people, because I didn't, yeah, because I was painting, I didn't realize when I took this challenge on
Yeah.
how much work it was actually going to be. I was creating the painting like literally every day, and then I would have to try and have time to photograph it and put it up. And it was fun because some people, when they wanted 3 or 4 people wanted the one picture, you'd see really funny comments then on the Instagram page
Yeah.
afterwards. And it created like a real buzz on the page. And I didn't have that many followers at the time. I think I'd only about 700 followers. And they all sold like in the end. And I actually ended up having to do 7 more because I misjudged the days in November. I didn't count my 30 days at, the poem. And I wrote 31 paintings. And I also two other people actually commissioned me to do a few other ones based
Yeah.
on it. So
So Michelle, just to clarify, you pre-sold these, right?
yeah,
You got
yeah,
some publicity in the local newspapers, and between that and your social media, you offered these at a very good price in
yeah,
advance. And then as you put them up, people say, I want it. Is
yeah,
that right?
exactly.
So the
Yeah,
first person to make a comment or say, I'll take that.
yeah,
So
we
people
used
were
to say
constantly coming back to you, weren't they?
yeah, so they were constantly coming back. Even there was some people like at the beginning, I think I had sold about 2 weeks worth of paintings, and then people I was kind of giving them out to anyone local that I could give them to or send them to. I would send them out as they were selling. So when people were getting them, they realized actually how much better they were than maybe they looked online and the value that they were getting. So people were coming back and buying more paintings then. And then it was quite fun because I know some of the journalists in the local Anglo Celt as well, and three of them actually bought a piece from it, but they said that they were having kind of debates in the office of, when would be the best time for me to buy, or when would I get into the right flow, or
Yeah, yeah.
would I get exhausted and the work would start to go downhill. So it was funny. It was creating these different conversations as well.
Yes. But they weren't all local sales, were they?
No, they were kind of, I had one
Czech
Czech
Republic?
Republic.
Yeah.
I think I had one that went to America. And then I think a lot of the rest of them probably were in Ireland after that. So yeah, they got about.
You're a marketing genius, and I know you are being influenced by somebody else, but the point is you actually did it, which is quite a challenge.
Well, it really taught me to be a little bit more productive as well. And I was really conscious of having the work to be good. Like I really wanted for the work to be good.
Of course. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
that's why I spent so much time. These are two of probably my favorite that came out of it. I just
yeah.
really like the colors in these pieces.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the year
Yeah.
after I decided to do this one, the Stop Painting project. So my whole idea around this is I like to see if there's a different way that we can sell art, like an interactive kind of way. How can you make it more fun? And like with the mystery art sale, it was a bit like those lucky bags that you would get when you were young,
Yes. Yeah.
it was a surprise. It's the nice idea of a surprise. And like art can be so serious as well. I just like, how do you bring a little bit of fun into it?
Yeah.
Um,
I
so with
like it. Yeah.
the stop painting project came from when a lot of times when I'm painting, I post videos online of what I'm working on or pictures in process, and people will say, "Oh, don't paint anymore on that. Like, stop painting."
Hmm.
And so that gave me the idea of, okay, a few different things came into my head. Was like, am I over painting the work? Would the work be better if I didn't work on it so much? And so my idea was, if these people really want this work at the point that they're telling me to stop, then they can buy it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So otherwise, I don't really, I wanted the work to become what I wanted it to become. So again, I started with, I pre-sold some of the places of these paintings. They were 8 by 8 paintings on a wooden cradle panel. And I started painting on these 30 pieces, and then I would, keep showing the progress of the work so that at any stage people could say, stop painting. And even if I had a finished painting, if somebody didn't say stop painting and they took it for themselves, then I would repaint over it. So some of those works have multiple paintings underneath them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I just kept going until basically I sold all of them.
And tell me, Michelle, did you learn anything in terms of what people like? You know,
No,
oh, did you not? I thought you could say, of course I did. Yeah.
no, I was, because some people were taking the work literally a day or two into me starting it, would be extremely abstracted, and like as a way I would never have left them.
Well, that's my
Uh,
point. you know.
Yeah. So I suppose what I learned was not to be precious about the work.
Mm.
I was having to paint over paintings that I really liked,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then hoping that they would get better. And usually they would.
Sure. And
So
but then
that
having to stop as well when you didn't think you were finished, but they thought you were finished.
it just made me look at the work, I guess, in a different way. It made me a lot more productive. Like what all these challenges did was, I suppose, they help you be a lot more productive
Yeah.
painting, because I'm quite a slow painter.
Okay.
Um,
Not
so
anymore.
so these are two pieces, and I suppose this was kind of showing, like, I always feel like I have this two sides to me, like the more kind of mystical, where I like to do the more realistic faces, and then my landscape work. The landscape work that I do now really started in this project, so that was a huge thing that I learned from this project, that came out of it, was these mystical landscapes. And this project started during COVID, and so what I realized was I was starting to paint places I would like to go, because we couldn't go on holidays, and they were these imaginary worlds. I
Yeah.
started yeah.
Okay.
So you can go on to the next one
Yeah.
then. So this is what came out of, I suppose, that project. Was I started doing these very large landscape paintings. And I called it the Land of Gemini, because Gemini is my star sign, and it's also the sign of duality. And I started this idea of two-sided painting. So if you turn that painting upside down, it's another painting.
Yes.
When I paint these, I was having to keep turning. They're quite intensive to do, because you have to keep turning it, upside down, to make sure it works on both sides. But
Please.
I like the idea that people could, if they felt like changing the artwork in their house, they could just turn it upside down, and it
Yeah.
was a different view for them to look at.
Clever. Very clever. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, I brought that work, the landscapes I had started working on, I brought them to, this is the Sachi Gallery in London, when I did that
Mhm.
in 2021. And I suppose that was kind of a new experience for me too, because there was a lot of very well-known artists there. There's a lot of, they're constantly filming you, and you're being interviewed, and there was a
Yeah.
lot of celebrities around the place. So it just kind of shows you a different, it was putting me with artists that I suppose I didn't realize, I could be like, if you
Sure.
know
Yeah.
what I mean.
Well, ups
Yeah,
ups the game.
sure. So this was another one. I did, like, the first one, the mystery landscape project. So it was just land. I did this one. It was solely landscapes. So it was a paint in a day for 3 weeks, and the same idea. People would prepay, and then they could grab a landscape.
Yeah. Very good.
They're just two pieces from it, and they would be. I sent them out in. They'd be mounted and ready to be framed when
All
they were
right.
sent.
Okay.
And so then I did it. I was selected to do this solo exhibition in the Culture Lawn in Belfast, which is the Irish centre there. And yeah, this was a really great opportunity, because there's some amazing artists have shown their work here. So this was only landscapes, and all the titles were in Irish, and all the writing was in Irish there. So that was a really nice experience.
That was
And then
May of this time last year.
yeah, so that was this. So I had two. So I had this show, and then not that long after it, then I had the show in Korea. So it was kind of it was a very, very long, a long time of painting.
Yes.
So this is the Star Art Fair. This was the first year I did the fair. So this is just kind of a glimpse. And they had us on panels, like talking with different artists from around the world, and filming a lot of work. So yeah, it was a really nice experience. And then this is the year after. So this is my solo show in Seoul. That's on the right there. That's Michelle Winthrop. So she's the ambassador for Ireland. Absolutely incredible woman. And then down at the bottom there is Jason, who brought me over. He's the head of Start
Yeah.
in Korea. And then the next one is just that's just a kind of a glimpse of the whole. It's actually a huge gallery, so it was split into two. One side I
All
had
right.
the landscape work, and then the other side it was all the folklore work. And I
Yeah.
suppose this is the one that the embassy in Korea bought, is based on a Korean
Right.
folklore story. Yeah. And then so the show, then it kind of got split up a little bit. So most of it went to this hotel in Busan in South Korea, which is an art hotel. There's a gallery in the top. And the strangest thing that happened there was the Minister for Culture sent this huge bouquet from Korea to the show. So that was a nice thing to know that he knew about the show.
And an
And then,
interesting thing came out of this, wasn't it? Which is
yes,
this.
one of the big things that came out of it was the Grand Intercontinental Hotel, beautiful 5-star luxury hotel in Seoul. They selected 5 of my paintings to make cocktails out of them, because Freeze was on the same time. So it was to launch their package there, of Freeze. And they had seen my work there because after the fair the year before, some of the work had been in the hotel and had sold there. So yeah, it was they made these cocktails that were quite successful, and unfortunately I didn't get to try them because they did it after I left.
What do they?
um,
Let's see.
yeah, so it's a bit sad to have a cocktail menu that you can't try.
It's worth a trip
And
back out.
exactly. And then the next one is just a photo of they had this up for Freeze as well. So these are the paintings that the cocktails were based on as well. This is in the hotel. Like, the hotel is incredible. It's like an art gallery,
Yeah.
and it's so.
And Michelle, the interesting thing about this as well is that you actually get a commission out
Yeah,
of the cocktails.
yeah, so the way it works is you get a commission for everyone. So now it's a very small commission, but it's
Hmm.
nice, and your name's getting out there, and there's a piece about you written in the hotel and about
Yeah,
each cocktail.
I think that's
So
wonderful. Yeah.
this is the one that you liked at the show. So this was one I had in the BDO with the Irish Contemporary Art Society exhibition there recently. So this is one of my landscapes, bringing in birds into it. And then the
Beautiful.
next one is kind of what I'm working on at the minute, is this idea of the way work is framed. So I call these my Polaroid paintings, with the black kind of image around them.
Yes.
And so I was doing them, and then the next one, if you is I did a residency this year in the town hall in Cavan, in the theatre there. And my idea when I went in there was to do actually paper mache work. But my experiments didn't go down too well. I was making bowls and trying to make different plates and surfaces that I could paint on. But
Mhm.
I had this idea of the wish box, where I put a box in the theatre there. This is it on the left, and people could put their wishes into the box of what they would like to manifest in life. So I have those as ideas for paintings for the future. But the main thing that came out of that, if you want to just click on to the next slide, is these pieces, which was an idea I've had for a long time, is actually painting out onto the frame and around the sides of the frame.
Hmm.
So that's what I'm working at in the minute, is this idea of painting onto the wooden frames.
Yeah. Lovely. Lovely. Sorry for rushing you there.
Fast.
Now you're well able for it. You can keep up with it. Let's just go to the chat now, and I'll unmute people. Yvonne Maloney O'Keefe says, I see you've painted in the back of some canvases. Have you painted in the back? I think maybe you're confused, because I thought the same, but in fact, it's not painting each side, it's turning it.
So
Oh,
I turn them upside down, and
that's
yeah,
it. Yeah,
when you're painting, you have to keep doing that on the wall.
yeah, exactly. Eilish says, beautiful color palette. Thanks for the insight into your work. Gillian, amazing work. Regine, I'm exhausted hearing about this woman's career to date. Had the pleasure of showing with Michelle in a joint show. Amazing artist and amazingly generous with her support and expertise. A really interesting interview. Thanks, Michelle and Alan. Thank you very much for that, Regine. Catherine Kagan, you're a force of nature, Michelle.
Oh, thank you.
Uh, exceptional artistic talent and such an intelligent, innovative intellect, says Donald Denham.
Thank you,
He
Donna.
was one of our ambassadors in many countries,
Oh, thank you very much.
representing Ireland. Really inspiration and uplifting interview. You have the perfect combination of business, artistic, and wonderful imagination. Brilliant, Yvonne. Thanks for that, Yvonne. So I'm going to unmute everybody.
Just we had talked about this actually, Alan, the other day, and we didn't mention it, but it is that idea of, like, and artists don't seem to be taught it in school, is that you have to know the business side of art, or else you can't make a career. Like, I mean, I know Emily Jeffords, an American artist, and she teaches art for business, but she says, if you can't sell your work, you can't show up in the studio tomorrow.
Yes.
That.
Yes.
So, and I always think that's a really important thing to remember. And I'm very lucky that I have like the support of Ivano at the moment to try and help me. But and there's almost like a kind of an emperor's new clothes thing about artists, I think, that we're not allowed to say maybe that somebody else is helping us because we can't sell enough, or we don't know yet, or you know, that
Yeah.
it's hard. Even when you get funding, I mean, the funding really is usually doesn't cover very much
No.
in general, even though it's amazing to get it when you get it, but I mean, you can't live off that. You can't
No.
rely.
Absolutely, and even some very successful artists are you know, just about getting by.
Yeah,
Um,
and people are afraid to say that. And I think it's really important for us to look at different ways. I think up until the last couple of years, there's almost been a snobbery around nearly artists doing prints or, you know, putting their work on any kind of merchandise or anything like that.
okay, anyone like to make a comment or ask a question?
Oh, David's my name, David.
David, hi, David. How are you?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this session. Thank you, and I'm blown away by Michelle. I've been painting now myself for a number of years, and I've gotten great encouragement from her perspective on selling, and the notion of seeing that as something very, very what's the best way to describe it, as a logical step forward, as opposed to, you know, being a legend in your own living room and just sort of, you know, having the courage to step outside your comfort zone. So I find that really inspiring. So thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Like, I mean, every time I did it, I was always scared, and it was always hard, but I always got back way more than, you know, I thought I would. So I think that's a really important, like, these things are hard, like, you know, and it's scary. It's scary when you have to spend a lot of money on a fare and hope that it works out, or on flights to another country or something like that. But everything I did always led, you know, to something else. Like there's a lovely quote I like. It's everything you do is a little brick in the empire. And even though it may feel like something doesn't work out at the time, it's amazing how these things can just kind of start to build up and
Yeah.
influence things eventually.
Well, I gave myself.
I end up in Korea.
Well, I gave myself permission a few years ago to break out of the house, you know, and hire a studio. And when I was in the studio, I said to myself, I'm paying money for this, and what am I doing here? But the space brought me to a different place in myself. And it was like as if I was giving myself a permission to frame what I was doing and to honor what I was doing. And that space became something, out of that came something very, very different. And I'm back home now, like you, I'm painting in the house. But having had the experience of having a studio was invaluable, because I became part of a group. I exhibited in the studio space. And again, you know, if I hadn't decided to invest that time and money, that I wouldn't have had that experience. So yeah, you know, those risks are scary, but you know, that's what I get great encouragement listening to you, because that's what I find I've had to do myself. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I think that's really important, because I think a lot of people, you know, if you had any other business, you'd have to invest.
I was just interested in asking, because you started off in the music industry, did you ever think of doing sound drawings?
I've kind of thought about that. How could I bring the sound into my work a lot? And even when I had my exhibition in Korea and the one in the culture lawn, I had a bird soundtrack playing in the background, and I had even scents being pumped into the room of nature, to try and kind of create this whole, I guess, otherworldly kind of place when you go into it. But that's something I always think about, is how can I connect the sound and the art together, which is something I'd love to do, because I'm very into, like, I studied energy healing as well, and I'm very into all these alternative therapies and holistic and anything weird and wonderful and
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. Your work is amazing. Thank you so much. I learned a lot from you too today. Yeah, thank you.
And I really enjoyed your talk as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thanks,
Mary. Okay, anybody else like to ask a question or make a comment?
Hiya, Michelle. How are you?
How are you?
Michelle and myself don't live too far away, but that's the first time I've seen inside your studio.
Wow, very good.
It's great to see you. But I just have a comment, two comments to make. First of all, what I absolutely love about Michelle's work is you just have such a belief in your own practice, despite the odds, despite challenges, despite everything. And you've taken the opportunities and you've gone for them, and you've created your own path as an artist. And I think that's really, inspirational for me, and I imagine for the other people listening as well.
Thank you. Well, that means a lot. You know how much I love your work, Michelle. So
mutual, the mutual fan club.
Come over and get some time for real. Come over to the studio sometime.
We will do that. Meet in Kilmallock. The other thing is, I think that you've brought up something there, and I think it's really important. It is the fear of artists not speaking and saying, about how funding, and how funding is divided up, or how it's seen in Ireland, because everybody's afraid, because you're afraid it'll impact upon your own applications or whatever. But I do think that it is an important point you made about not being able to go and show in a commercial gallery, because funding is available for commercial galleries to go to commercial fairs. So there is a sort of two standards there. And I think it's unfortunate, because from those images, your work looked amazing in those fairs, and they've opened up opportunities for you. And in the end of the day, when you're making your living as a full-time artist, it's not, I'm going to say, like, it's wrong that opportunities like that should be limited because of a technical decision, or because of a decision that's not allowed. It doesn't tick a box.
Yeah, I don't understand that. When I had heard that when I was applying for other countries, they said, yeah, they give it to galleries, but I don't know why they won't. Like, a gallery is going to have a lot more money than an artist on their own, to pay for these things. So it just doesn't make sense, especially when what my thing was, like, I'm an Irish artist. There's no other Irish artist kind of doing that at the moment. Like, why am I not being kind of supported to promote Irish art in another country? I'll put whatever badges of, put your name everywhere over there, but
on your forehead.
Yeah.
The enterprise board is really the only one that gave me a little bit of support the first year I went over to the fair. They'll give you some funding for half of your accommodation and half of your flights for certain things, because what I had hoped was that from that I would be able to create more prints, and therefore be able to make more of a business out of that, of prints and merchandise. And then I guess their hopes is that, and your hopes is that, you'd eventually be able to employ somebody else in Ireland, to help you run that business. So they seem to have a much more open mind of you promoting yourself in another country and promoting Ireland in another country.
Yes,
it's unfortunate that maybe the artist body, I think it comes from maybe that they're afraid of too many artists will apply to do art fairs. But I mean, even for the amount they would actually give you, it wouldn't come anywhere close to covering what you would need. And also, it's a huge amount of work to do any of these fairs.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that, there's only a certain amount of artists who are willing to risk that money and put that much effort in to do, or even want. Like, there's a lot. For me, I feel that as an Irish artist, you need to look outside the country, whereas some people are just happy and they have their own thing set up, which is amazing, and are able to survive just from their work being sold in Ireland. But I don't. That's the only thing I can think of, that maybe that's why they don't open it up for art fairs.
That's a debate that could go on a long time. So, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I get it. And Michelle Boyle, thank you so much for your comments on that. Okay, all right. Look, we leave it there. Thanks all for joining us this morning. Before we go, I have to wish Michelle every future happiness, because she and Ivano are getting married in Naples, in Italy, in September.
Thank you very much.
Every good wishes and congratulations. I hope you have a wonderful time, which I know you will, and look forward to seeing your future work.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me today. I know all the amazing artists you've interviewed, so it's a real privilege to have been included with them. So
pleasure. I'm delighted you were. Okay, folks, thanks a million. See you not next Saturday, but the Saturday after. Okay, bye now.
Bye-bye.